All right. Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just switch the old camera here. There we go. Today's page that I posted is page number 12 in the ongoing sci-fi story that I've been doing on posting instead of one-page stories right now. I just needed to change a pace at the start of the year, so this is number 12. There are 3 more for this week, and 1 tomorrow and 2 on Friday. And then starting with Saturday, I'll start posting 1 pages for the immediate future. So the whole reason of doing this 1 page thing has been, initially it was to engage with others during a lot of the lockdown stuff that was going on a couple of years ago that I know were isolated and needed some sort of touchstone out. So I said, hey, well, if you interact with me, we can do a story together. And that, I kept going on that. So now we've put out a comic of that. And then now the last one that we put out was volume 1 of the 1-page story extravaganza. And this has, 78 pages inside? And then we did Alphabet Book last year as well. We put that out, which is about a bunch of 1-page stories. Hiya, Linda. Hiya, Tim. And so stay tuned. There's exciting things coming up along the lines of the 1-page story stuff. But the sci-fi story that I'm doing is just because at the start of the year I didn't have an immediate project on my docket. So I thought now is the time to do this. And so as of a week and a half ago, that free parcel of time disappeared. And, so I wasn't necessarily as able to just post everything continuous day after day after day because, we get caught up and on the things that we have to do. So just finishing this off, this 15-page arc, and back to 1-page stories that we go, because I have a lot of fun doing these. So hopefully people that are reading the ongoing sci-fi story aren't going to have a difficult time with what's going on in the story, because it does bounce around a little bit. And with that bouncing around, there's a degree of reliance on the reader to stay with the narrative, right? Because we've got these characters coming from this place, those characters coming from that place, these characters coming from that place. By a couple of pages ago, everybody's in the same spot. When everybody's in the same spot, I introduce the final characters to the equation. But during the course of this, the first character that's introduced has been chased by the authorities that want to bring her into custody. And so this is where they first show up. But I think it's around page 7 is where the authorities catch up to where she first is. And, we don't hear what happens at the hospital per se. The next time that we see them is now, but in the interim, the last thing we left off with was them talking about the shuttle that they're getting on, and then the authorities are arriving at that station to come and seize, to follow through on that started narrative of, we can't have psionics. And in this universe, that means people have had psionic powers in the past, and it was a problem. And that now anybody that is discovered to have any, the government immediately goes after because of whatever happened before. And, the thing about world building is that when I'm doing 1-page stories, I have to root those to some extent in a grounding of, you can never dip your foot too far into a pool of ideas, because you generally have to keep it comprehensive enough that somebody can just look at this and go, oh, okay, it's in space. Oh, there's penguins in space. Okay, yeah, or it's on a space station, and one of the people working on the space station is an emu who likes to watch cartoons. And these are one-page stories that I've done before. But so those are really light dips into the pool, right? As opposed to this one where there's all this additional narrative that, as a story progresses over time, everything becomes more and more clear ideally to the reader. But and we write for the reader, right? So I'm trying to get notions across without just giving everything and just explaining everything constantly. I might reevaluate that and change that perspective. When farther along, I might realize that there's more necessitation of letting people in on the larger things that are going on. So there's that, right? But that's where we've left off for the ongoing story. I haven't even named it. 12 pages in, I haven't named a thing. 15 pages done, 12 pages in, and there's no title for it. It's ongoing book is what I file that under my Patreon. And now I also file each page in accordance to the principal character. So this page is Arden 5. Arden's the girl they're chasing. But it's the 5th page that specifically applies to her. The last page was Rand 1 because it specifically applies to this rich guy with his entourage coming onto the shuttle, and And then there's also the Crane 1, 2, 3. I think there's Heinz 1, 2. That's the twins. So there's when you label the pages that way, it helps me to continue to assess the progression of narrative as I'm writing this, because it makes me be conscious of the fact that have I devoted enough time to this character's journey? Have I devoted enough time to this character's journey? Or that character's journey, I suppose. And by doing so, it helps me to more readily comprehend how things are moving along. So the progression of that would look like, I suppose, I'll throw this down here. Let me switch on the camera here. Now, the progression of that, there's the progress I made on yesterday's page, and I'll finish that off today and post it. But this is the page of if Canada was a theme park, what would its mascot be? And so far we've got maple syrup and a talking hawk, and that was suggested by, frankly, Mapleland, Frank Salazar. And then the talking hockey dog named Doug, which is this guy who's chasing all the pucks. That was suggested by Yolanda. And there's more to come that I'll be finishing off later today. And this is, I've been drawing this in pencil. But so back to the narrative idea. So if I figure out, so here's the overall story. So anything that just does a block, like the title card that it starts with, right? That I represent as all. And then I go to Arden 1. So this is Arden's line. So there's, so that's 1. So there's Arden 1, there's Arden 2, and then I go to Crane, and then Crane is 1 and 2. And then I go to back to an Arden. So there's Arden 3. So that is where the police arrive at the hospital. And then I introduce the next element, which is the 2 twins that are off to find jobs to support their family. And so their last name is Heinz, just like this person's last name is Crane. So you can see that as I'm trying to, I'm sorry, that should be on this line. That's 3. I'll take that out of there. Take that out of there. So as I'm trying to carry the story along, you can see how I'm doing this back and forth amongst characters. And so the follow through, just give me 1 sec. I want to check, make sure I've got green 1, 2, Arden. Oh, I'm sorry. See what I did? I already did it. 1, 2, 3, and this is 4. And then we go Heinz 1, 2. And then back to one more crane. So now we've got 3 cranes. And then we bring in Rand. And so then we got the fifth line, I'm sorry, that comes in. Rand 1. And then we do Arden 5. And then Rand 2 is what you'll see tomorrow. And so by plotting out this sort of thing for myself, what it's helping me to understand is the storylines that I've got going, you know, and it shows me that we've got this much space between each of these, touching back on these characters. So what's necessary is, after, of course, Rand, we really want to keep up to date with. I'm sorry. The next one's Heinz, and then it's Rand. So we're touching back to Heinz. So it's doing this sort of dot down to the next one, back to this one, introduce the next one, back to this one, and it just keeps bouncing back and forth between the different characters so that you can see the progression of all of them coming together. And it also helps to establish a moment, ideally for the reader to come to terms with this character, this character, these characters, these characters, these characters, and then as they're all coming into the same place. Like Heinz 3 is the first time that you're going to see everybody in the same place. And so because of that, it identifiably sort of roots it into, that's the continuities all line up so that everybody's in the same spot. And then so when page 15 comes along, it's a culminative part of all those people coming in the same place at the same time, and what happens then. And so that's what ends the first part of the narrative, because the first part of this larger narrative is getting everybody in one spot. So that's basically what I've been doing with the sci-fi story. And hi, Susanna, welcome aboard. Susanna says a big hi from little me. There you go. So with this in mind, the whole notion of trying to figure out ways through things like one-page stories of how to get things down on paper so that you can see what's going on, and so that you can understand this world that I've been building. By doing it just on the one pages, it forces me to have to really make some quick sense of the context of the story, and how deep down the well of weirdness I can take a person. So yeah, it's challenging, to do something like that. It's but with the knocking things over, boom boom, with the amount of it that I've been doing in the last few years, of one-page stories, I feel like it's sort of really kind of set home something that beforehand I would have had a hard time putting those things together. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with what the heck is going on? I don't know what. Sorry, my thing is telling me. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't care. I never understand what the messages are that you get from these programs as you're using them. And look at a widget. What's a widget? So back on track. So doing all those one pages has helped me to figure out how to get quick and into the context, quick into the characters, and because I have to sum up the whole arc of whatever it is I'm presenting, however small or large that narrative might be, and that also helps to inform is it a dialogue? Is it just characters talking? Is it a narrator so that I can expound on even larger ideas and maybe things that aren't even in the visual elements? Is it a recollection of somebody, that, well, there's the overall narrator that's in the days of yore, and then there's the recollection narrator that's looking back on the situation, looking back on the moment and saying, here's what happened and where, when, and how. So there's these different sort of mechanisms that I'll try to get those things across. So with that in mind, so I'm back to doing some one-page stories. So this one I'll be, I just got to finish off a couple more little illustrations on this, but I want to draw on pen today. So so I'm going to switch over to a new one-page story, and I thought I would do something along the lines of, well, I want to change tack for first and foremost, because I don't want people to misunderstand one story being connected to the narrative of the next story because of the precedent set that I've been doing that for the last, X amount of posts since the start of the year. So I really got to switch directions here. Now, I thought about picking another one-page suggestion off the same page in the book, right? So here's the book, and the suggestions that I've been working from are all these ones about Canada was a theme park. And then I was going to jump over to the suggestion from Jim of the Statue of Liberty was built in London, Ontario by the great-grandfather of Carrot Top. And I can't do that, I realize now, because people will think because it's set in Canada, it's related to the previous Canadian page. So, that doesn't work. So somebody wants me to draw something in a steampunk style. This is Chris K, our good friend Chris Kaluri. Draw a story about an otter in the steampunk style. Okay, so that's a great shift, and the reason it's a great shift is that it allows me to have the principal character be a real break from what's happening before that. What's a random otter talking to the audience, or what's a random otter talking to in our narrative have to do with, what's the mascot of Canada? Because there's not, I've already got this dog running away from a large vat of spilling maple. There's no more animals in that one. So I'll make a note here and we'll put it up. So today's suggestion I'll write it down, is steampunk style about Lord Otter. Now, Lord Otter could be some austere gentleman, and that suggestion comes from Chris K, our good friend Chris in Mexico. And with that kind of a suggestion, it could really be about some austere British, this is the sentence I was starting, and of course lost my train of thought immediately. A British austere gentleman, all dressed in tweed, who is, hello, I'm Lord Otter. Welcome to the grounds, And maybe that's a fun place for us to start. right? Maybe that's the kind of character that we're looking for, because you assume that with Lord Otter, what's it going to be? Steampunk books. There's some really interesting sequential books set in the steampunk. One is called, I think it might just be called Steampunk or something like that. But like Steam Punk, and that was by Chris Bacalo. And then there was another great book that had steampunk elements in it that was by Terry Dodson. I'm not sure if it's Terry and Rachel. They're a husband and wife team. Terry does all the drawing, and then Rachel is his inker. So she inks the lines that he's laid down and embellishes, spatter techniques and all kinds of other things. So Linda writes in a steampunk style about Lord Otter from Chris is today's theme. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Linda. Linda, the moderator with the mostest. So there's some really good examples of steampunk comics. There's lots of other steampunk comics, but those two I think would be, in my opinion, kind of a high point. Like they're really, really refined style to them. Very distinct. So I've always liked those. All right, so I've got one of these mechanical colored pencil pencils. And hopefully the miking, people can understand me more clearly. I got the new mic in place as well as the new camera. And I'm working on my lighting here in the studio space as well, trying not to wash out this camera, and at the same time, how much of media you really need to see. So, yeah, that's a little better. So, yeah, it's trial and error, right? So let's see. Lord Otter. Because, I mean, there's something fun that we can do with that as well. Like, why not... let's do that. Let's follow that train of thought. Let's do the English gentleman, Sir Lord Otter, and play with this steampunk notion, play with this steampunk world. So, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Steampunk. I don't necessarily draw very steampunky things, but I actually do have a bit of fun doing that. There's the one series that I've done. Let me see if I can find that for you. There's a series called Stream of Conceitedness, which is going to be another hardcover book that we're going to release at the end of the year. And so there's a lot of crazy steampunky elements in it. There's I'll show you this one page here. Just got to switch the camera. Stupid light. There we go. So here is, sorry for that, by the way, folks. Here is the page I'm referring to. And so this is sort of playing with the steampunk notion by having this big, giant, punky robot, very mechanized robot. The idea in this that is pneumatically driven. So Susanna says, I haven't decided yet if I like the steampunk style or not. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like, it's depending on how it's being executed and by who. Because I've seen some really good steampunk stories, and I've seen some real turkeys over the years. And it's a hit and miss thing about which way it's going to go. But there's been a lot of comics that have steampunk elements in them, and they don't necessarily sell a lot of them. So, all right, so let's do our young lord. I'm going to give him big burns, big old sideburns to start off with. So I'm roughing in with the red pencil, or I can just, I'll just draw with pen. Who are we kidding? All this roughing in nonsense takes too much time. All right, So I've got, these are simple Bic round sticks, very similar to like a paper mate, and they do the trick. So the trick with drawing directly in pen is it doesn't afford me a lot of opportunity to make mistakes, which is fine, right? With that in mind, it's you have to be pretty deliberate as you're working when you're putting your lines down, and but that's all right. It's okay if we make mistakes, because we're going to be far more informed of the mistakes that we're making than the people that are reading our stories, really. Because we'll look at something and go, oh, I made a mess of that. It wasn't supposed to be laid out that way. Whereas the next person's like, you did. Where's the mistake? So don't worry too much about that. Just allow yourself to take that in stride and go along with the moment. So I'm using the side of the pen. So I'll draw with the pen at an angle and lightly, so I can get a wonderful range of gray value, as opposed to drawing with the tip of the pen, where we get, this far darker and thicker line. The challenge of working on the side is that with a ballpoint pen, and I've probably said this to some of you a bazillion times, with a ballpoint pen, the ink comes out evenly all around the end of the pen, all around the tip of the pen. So that as you're sitting here and you're doing your light, lovely applications on the side, what is eventually going to happen is that a dollop of ink is going to gather up on the top side of your pen. And then that's why when you turn this way, suddenly you've got this dot that's smudges of ink. That's how that happens. So while I'm drawing, I have a paper towel pad up here on my desk that I just lean over and I scratch out the ink. I get off that extra amount of ink and put it over there so it doesn't smudge all over the drawing. And that works to some extent. It doesn't entirely factor for what I call the Chris equation, which is me making my own mistakes of just smudging my own hand right through the middle of a picture. So, okay, so here I'm drawing Lord Otter, and I'm going to have to, I think, give him a monocle, because of course he's going to wear a monocle, especially if we're setting it in this steampunk kind of a context, right? And so I'm going to put him in place. I'm going to give us the monocle over his second eye, but having him talking about the situation at hand, as our by drawing him in that first panel, we can either talk about him as a character from that narrative point of view, or we can have him, speaking and saying, expressing consternation about all these beavers that are inhabiting his lawn, and we otters have had enough of the beavers, whatever. And it's just some sort of idea we can play along with as we go. But by drawing our character, our principal character, first and foremost, it gives me two options to chase down which way I'm going to go. A lot of people won't work this way. A lot of people want to have some kind of defining structure for their story, and make a lot of these choices in advance before they begin, drawing the page. I don't. With all of these one-page stories, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, and there's a degree of comfort, self-assurity after a while of doing it that develops, so that I don't, overly think things too much. I don't worry about it too much before I really get into it. And with anything, it's the Carnegie Hall conversation. The more practice, the more refinement that we develop in our crafts, right? How do you get the Carnegie Hall? Practice. That's the old expression. So, yeah. I watched a really cool documentary years ago about this. There was this, I'm not sure if it was an apartment building or a converted industrial building, because there was all of these rather interesting and very unique living spaces there within this building. And people who had converted their apartments, and the majority of their apartment was a dance studio, and they lived in this tiny little part of it in the back. And they instructed all of these dancers that, were the dancers at Carnegie Hall. And here's all of these artisans and dancers and singers themselves that all lived within this building, and were all very oriented around creative expression. And so the challenge is that this building was way too old, and was probably not considered fire safe enough. And I really wish I could remember the name of this documentary, because I enjoyed it immensely, hearing the perspective of all these creative types. But I believe it ends with them all having to face the reality that they're going to have to move away, and that their lives will be changing dramatically, because they're not going to be, allocated right by or beside Carnegie Hall. And sometimes we come across these really interesting little stories, these little docudramas that tells us something about characters that, they flit into our lives, and then we think about them years later. It's like music. When you're sitting there completely, non-related to a song, like whatever you're doing has no relation to the song that pops in your head. Like you're riding a bicycle, and there's a path of water across your there's a big bunch of water in front of you on the path, and as you're riding your bicycle, and suddenly you start humming Rhiannon, by Fleetwood Mac. No context to anything that's going on. You watch the lyrics of Rhiannon. It's about a woman trying to avoid a puddle on a bike path. So here's our Lord Otter as I'm drawing them in. And of course, we're going to have to give him a kooky monocle. There's an absolutely surreal movie. There's a French director named Junet. And Junet and Caro are the two creators that are responsible for a few films. One is Delicatessen, and another is City of Lost Children. And Junet is the director that did the Alien 3 film with... no, I'm so sorry. He did Alien 4. Alien 3 was the director that went on to do the Batman movies and so forth. Anyhow, this French director, these two guys working together, Junet and Caro, they had this way of looking at the world. One Delicatessen set in a post-apocalypse in an apartment building, and City of Lost Children has Ron Perlman in it, and it's in what looks like a 1920s world, but with all these fantastic steampunk elements in it. And so there's the Cyclops gang, and it's a whole bunch of, thugs running around the streets, and they all have a cycloptic eye, a robotic eye, and that they each wear, and they're chasing down children. And so the protagonist's little sister gets kidnapped, and off he goes on his adventure. And the protagonist in this film is played by a young, oh, for heaven's sakes, I just had his name and I forgot it. anyways, he's in Alien 4 as well. Ron Perlman. It was Ron Perlman. So, but if you're looking for some interesting surreality, a main actor that is in the films that these guys did together, including the Alien 4 film that Junet did, is an actor named, and this actor is also in Amelie. His name is Dominique Pignon, and he's got this kind of a face, and he's very, very funny. Okay, so we've got his monocle, and I think what I'll do is that I'll put a smaller monocle in the corner, like so, and maybe we'll even put a third one over here to the side, and so we'll put his, we got to give him a top hat because he's steampunk, so we have to give him a, trying to think of a hat of the age. I'm going to go with a typical bowler is what I'm going to have him wearing as his chapeau. Oh no, what kind of chapeau? So, and then we've got his hair coming down here at the side and his big old mutton chops. Should we make the mutton chops bigger? If anybody thinks that I should make them bigger, put it in the comments or in the chat. I got a fever, and the cure for it is mutton chops. So we can also put some steampunky elements into his hat as well. That's another opportunity that we can look into here. Yeah, really figuring out the shape of this hat here. There we go. So there's this top hat. The side, I don't know. Should we put a steampunk element on the hat or not? That's a fun little question to ask ourselves. I'm going to give him I'm going to have him wear a scarf. Don't know why. Just feeling like a scarf is an ideal thing to add on here. Just something extra, separate him, a little extra kick from, the expectation of how we dress today. Sometimes it's fun to do that with characters, to add an element to them that separates them from, looking like other characters you've drawn on other projects. And it's kind of fun when you see somebody who really leans hard into their world building. Daniel Zejic, probably pronounced that wrong. Brilliant artist who did a series called Winter World. Of course, it's entirely set in a world that is frozen over. And so the way that people are dressing for the extremity of for the extreme elements, and at the same time, the difficulty of living in this world, and nobody gets along. They'll be wearing like parkas affixed with like football shoulder pads because it's all about utilizing whatever was presentable, whatever was available to them. So I like things like that. I think that that's kind of fun. All right, so let's get one more layer to a scarf here, and then we've got to be sure to get his jacket in. Susanna says, "I don't think I know that lord. Must we call him sir or my lord?" Well, he's a sir, right? He's just like a laird of the land, a lord of the land, chosen by king or queen of the time to oversee and govern the estates of the region. Their job responsibility has changed so massively, because a lot of the system used, very, very differently presented than it became. Now it's just like whoever, if you can get, knighted or inherit a lordship or buy a lordship, and there you go, and you've got some measure of responsibility for the region around you. But for the most part, it's just a position, a titled position. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but whereas before, these nobles, these barons, these lords, whatever, the people that, back in the Middle Ages, the king needs an army, and they defer, they call upon their lords, and those people have to conscript people from their region. And I always thought that was interesting. My last name is Runciman, and it has a few different basic meanings, one of which is basically workhorse, and but I know that specifically in Ireland, the Runcie man was a person who collected the rent. In Scotland and Ireland, I believe, on horses. The Runcie man, Runciman. And they also collected the rent due on suits of armor from the knights that are serving the local lord or baron or whatever. So, which to me sounds like, the Runcie man was maybe a little bit mental. Because who wants to go up to some guy outfitted in, armor that you can't get through, and say, "Hey, you owe rent on that." Swing, do I? Big sword. So they're probably very capable, or had a number of people traveling with them. Who knows? I wasn't there, so I can't specifically answer to that. But that's the etymology of my name, to my understanding. So, never met anybody with my name. Okay, so here is Lord Otter, and what he's doing, I'm not quite sure what it is that he's doing as of yet, but we can put a doodad in his hat, or just present it as a regular old hat. We can, steampunk is largely pneumatically driven machines, things that are driven by steam or clockworks, right? So whatever technology I'm going to put on this, it has to be related to steam or clockworks. So, we could put some gears on his head. Now, I have a stencil. I have a few stencils that have gears on them. Here's one. And there is one more that I have that has gear elements. But, so, using this one to start with here, what I can do is that as I'm drawing the scene here, I can take a different colored red, all right? So this is the Bic round stick that I'm using, and if you have more than one red pen, sit down and put them side by side with each other and rub the ink out. So the second ink, right, which is a Papermate Ink Joy, is much lighter a red than the Bic round stick that we're using. So I can use this stencil and put in this fun gear pattern in behind them. So that's kind of an interesting way to approach this. But I'll come to that in a second. Let's finish off drawing of Lord Otter and get him all settled up here. And then we'll put in this interesting background in the time that we have here. So I'm thinking about, the planes of the shoulder, and now we're moving down into the chest area. So I'm just trying to get some interesting folds and movement here to draw the eye. I haven't decided yet whether or not, we can do all kinds of fun things by making Lord Otter himself have a steam-driven heart or something like that. So, Sir Otter, Lord Otter. Lord Otter is the suggestion, so we'll stick with that one. And I got to make sure I curtsy to him when I meet him in public. So here, you see right there, that's a dollop of ink because it caught me before I turned over the pen on the paper towel. So we got one in there. Just the trick is don't smudge through it. Okay, so here's Lord Otter coming in, and we'll put similar patterning down here, these folds, and then we'll put just interesting lines, just interesting ways to move the eye around. And we'll get his shoulder in there. Put that little divot in there for where the arm is stitched onto the main part of the suit. So now that we've got an idea of our character in the foreground, now we can come in with this stencil in the background, stencil, and put our little clockwork gear design in behind him. So we'll bring all these lines down to here. So that our panel is even Steven. If anybody has any thoughts or ideas or contributions they want to add to this crazy little thing that we're doing, let me know. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is I'm going to move up our line, and I'm going to put it like so. And the reason that I'm doing that is that I'm sort of putting an externalized border on where we're going to put our stencil in here. So now when I put the stencil over, I can, I have a sort of cutoff point for myself I've sort of set up. So we'll move this image over a little bit so I'm not off the side of it. And so here's I'm using that little tiny line I put in there to govern the edge of this area. And so now I'm using this stencil to put in this little clockwork pattern without having to do all the measuring out of it and carrying on. This is there's a purists out there that will say, you shouldn't use things like that in your work. You should just draw all those things yourself. I don't agree. Have fun. It's your image. You're doing your own thing. Don't worry about what they're thinking about how you go about doing it. There's no preset requisite of this is the way to have to draw a story. So the red that I'm using is because there's a fair volume of it. You can really tell the color difference between this background red and the foreground red being darker than what we're applying now. That's good. That works to our benefit because it sets our foreground image ahead of our background, even though they're both the same color. Old Lord Otter here. See, I didn't line the whole space out because I think it's a little more interesting to have a border, not border, around panels sometimes. So with this case, where the patterned background goes to a specific point, whoopsie-daisy, where the background pattern goes to a specific point, but it doesn't have a crisp line around the edge of it, can, you know, sometimes make it really interesting and stand out on a page. Trick of using pen, however, is that I can't get into certain lines on here, or certain spaces on the template, just because the ballpoint tip of the pen is too large to fit in there. My studio cat Corbin is snoring on the other side of the room right now. Very helpful. Very helpful. I've tilted the image a little bit here. That's okay. We'll sort it out. I like switching what medium I'm using. I can't just sit there day in and day out and draw with the same thing. I'm way too hyper to do that. I think hyper is a fair way to assess myself there. Along the lines of some sort of hyper attention situation, or as I like to call it, situation. So another thing I could also do is to take a pencil and line out these areas and then just fill them in without having to hold this template down. That works too, but I'm doing it this way because I didn't think of that until just now. Hey, at least I'm honest. Why don't you just trace it out and then just fill those in? Oh, yeah. No. I might still put some kind of white outline around our character in the foreground, around Lord Otter, just to further separate him from the background. So here's the upcoming challenge, is that the panel will end halfway behind his head. So I'm going to show you my solution to that. Bear with me. This is exciting, exciting stuff, folks. So I'm going to put this top line in here. Okay. And then I'm going to flip it. Like so. And so because I've got this top line from where this ends and this top line that I've drawn in here, I can now continue this pattern, this recurring pattern, and it still follows along and behind the head. So, you know, cheeky, 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 cheeky. So if anybody has one-page story ideas they want to suggest, please feel free to do so. You can put it in the comments for this video, or you can put it in the chat. We'll try to write those down. Or if you're on any of the social media where I'm posting pages, please feel free to make them there and the comments there, and I will write those down and put those in the magic book here that I've shown you earlier. And we will write and draw those stories. Don't give me scripts. I've had a couple people giving me scripts lately, and not drawing people's stories. If you have a suggested idea, we'll see what craziness that inspires, as opposed to somebody wants to have me draw their script. And I mean, I got a couple big ones. Like, are you hiring me? No. Well, what makes you think I'm going to draw a one-page story? One fella gave me a 32-page book there, and I'm like, dude, one. We could just do the first page. Yeah, good. No, I'm gonna. I'm a silly person that way. That I got so many goofy ideas running around this old noggin that I'm hard pressed to stay with a longer project of my own, much less putting pictures to somebody else's words, unless I'm paid to do it. I really enjoy passing on ideas to people and teaching. I'm doing a lot of that lately, which is great. But I'm not good at working from scripts unless there's some motivation to do so, i.e. paid. It's like, why do your teachers read all your book reports? What's the principal reason that your teachers read your writing assignments? And that reason is they're paid to do it. Okay, so there's our little background, our little gear pattern. Hey, Robert, how you doing, sir? I got a new miking system in place now, so that people can actually hear me, and I've got a new camera set up, and we're just working on refining the lighting, and which is very tricky. So here's our first panel for our steampunk style story about Lord Otter. And so the whole gear patterning behind him sort of sells that steampunky notion. And because the pen that I used for the background is a lighter red ink, it sets it back from our foreground image. Good to see you, Robert. Hope all is well. So I have to make a decision about this hat. But it's fun to be doing some one-pages with people again. I've been very, very busy. And then on top of being very busy, posting the posting the ongoing story as I have been. Yeah, let's do some more one-pages. They're fun. We've done over 700 in the last 2 years, so. And there's a very exciting thing happening on February 18th. Well, yeah, officially. It's already happening now. Yeah. Okay, so there's our, let's do something with the chest here. I didn't fill that in. We'll give him a black shirt. So there's our principal character. Steampunk style about Lord Otter. So I think what I'm going to need to do is establish. We've got our character down. What time we got? An hour. So we've got our principal character down, but what is their world? Do we want to evaluate, some kind of idea about where they live, like what their ancestral manse is, some kind of country house or a state house of some kind. Let's play with that idea. So I'm just drawing with pen. I'm going to line us up though for the next panel shape and guide that in with the pencil, because it helps. It helps to know where we're going next. And I'll run this line across the bottom as well, and then we'll see where this panel's going to go. So let's start drawing the village. Let's start drawing the village that Lord Otter is overseeing in their area. And of course, we've got to figure out where we're going to go with this idea. I think what I would like to do is to incorporate an actual otter into the page, just because I find that funny. But because there's no conflict set up here, it's just the character's name, which is very funny. That gives us a lot of leeway for our creativity. So what I'm going to do now, okay, is that I'm going to draw our foreground elements in the darker red, and I'm going to use the lighter red and draw our background elements in behind. I still am not entirely sure that I'm going to put a white little line around our character to further separate them from the back. I don't know if I'm going to do that yet or not. So I'm putting some French curves on some wrought iron work for a lamp. We'll have a lamp hanging above our town. Initially, I was going to do the Statue of Liberty being built in London, Ontario, but the one-page story that I started on the stream yesterday was about if Canada was a theme park, what would be its mascot? So I can't jump from one story set, one Canadian story, and then something that's clearly relating to, the Statue of Liberty being built in Canada. So, because it's, people will connect those two stories, because especially because they may have become accustomed to thinking that everything I'm doing is one continuous project, because I've been posting page after page of this little sci-fi story since the start of the year. By the end of this week, though, we will be back on track with one-page stories. And I will come back to posting the sci-fi continuous piece. I'll do the next story arc when I have a bulk of it done, and I get caught up with teaching or something, and a location. So, okay, so here's our wrought iron. Let's put one here. A wrought iron lamp holder, and we'll put we got to put this off the side of a building for one, but let's start by putting our lamp on it, and then we can add some fun and silly steampunk elements to it, I guess. But just trying to be a little more flourish about it, than your typical, Victorian era street lamp. So I got to be, careful here. I don't go too far outside of, I don't want to take the drawing too far outside of the panel, because I'm just checking the image, because then I can't add some fun, or the smaller part of the lamp part can't go outside the panel, because then I can't add some fun steampunky elements to the top of it, like, pneumatically driven aspects to it, and so on and so forth. You know what, we can use this light red in here, because, this, oh, see, that works nicely. Okay, so here's our lamp. Now I'm going to put some industrial elements here, sticking in the top of it. Just for scuds. And we'll put a little stack out this side. something similar on this side. And we can put some steam coming out of those. But just having fun, just some silly fun. So there's something I figured out in working digitally. I like to diffuse lines and to put, like, I've been having fun lately on this one project that I'm working on, where I can, I'll draw a forest or a tree and the branches and so forth, but then I'll come in with the eraser and with a sort of spackling brush and cut back the leaves that are in the drawing. So it just pushes the elements, it makes it a little more transparent so that you focus less on the tree area, the forest area around the characters, because the characters are more crisp lined, like crisp in their line work, whereas around them it's less so. And there's this part of me, it's like, how do I do this when I'm just drawing regularly? Not that I necessarily really can with a ballpoint, but yeah, just I'm always trying to think of some other little way to have some fun. So tomorrow I will be posting page 13 of the ongoing sci-fi story that's been on Instagram and Facebook. And Friday I will be posting 2 pages. What, 2 pages, Chris? Because I love you all so much. And that'll take us through the first story arc of this ongoing story. And then so next week, I will be back to posting 1-page stories each day. Just because it helps. It helps a lot. It really helps me to have a sense of, refine my own sense of story. Okay, so what I'm doing is the steam that's coming out of the top of our lamppost, I'm having it move across the top a little bit, but then come back under our frame of reference for the panel here. Remember, I got to keep, I don't want any dollops of ink kicking in here while I'm pressing the pen down very lightly. If you don't know what I'm talking about, see earlier. Yeah, so I'm curious. People are working on new stuff. I haven't had an awful lot of time to be able to keep an eye on what everybody else is doing, see what everybody else is posting, if they're posting stuff on the social medias. So now I'm lightly going over in an alternate direction on our lamppost smoke. Where's my happy little ruler? See, were I doing this digitally, that's where I would cut that back farther with the eraser, the digital eraser there. All right, so let's keep going here. I've got to get this foreground building put in, and then I'll start drawing the streets in behind here in our distance as we talk about his town, Otterville. It would make sense for it to be called Otterville if it's the Otterville lordship that's governing it for however many years. And if there actually is a Lord Otter, that would be funny if there was. I never said anything like that. What? I have no problem whatsoever with beavers. Yeah. So here's top of our building. And we'll start putting in the building here in the foreground. Start bringing down some of its lines. We'll put some windows in, things like that. Being a little organic about how I do this so that I don't want it all be pretty. Nice, pretty, clean, straight lines, because the idea is that these are old buildings. And I'm using a pen to get different values down here. Yeah, the fun stuff. We need a window. That's what we need. Let's put a window in up here. Oh, gesundheit, Corbin. Cat's over there sneezing his head off. He's a sneezy guy. He sneezes so much we asked about it at the vet. Had it looked into it. He's fine. He's just a sneezy guy. I got a friend Mark who's a sneezy guy. How's things? Hold on. That's a Mark greeting. That's what we call that. Okay, so here's the top of our panel coming in. What are we at? An hour 12. Oh, okay, we're doing good time on this here panel, yolks. That's folks, but for a bunch of good eggs, yolks. Oh, look at that crazy perspective. Oof. What happened there? My goodness. We're out of control on that one. So I'm just trying to use some interesting lines and shapes and values and stuff. Just get our picture in here. I like drawing. I think the thing that I'm most comfortable with drawing is pen, because it's the thing that I do in my sketchbook a lot of time, right? Like that's a lot of those pages of just scribble after scribble of character after character and pen or marker drawings. The reason that I'll do that in a sketchbook is so that I'm not precious about it and I don't overthink it, because I'm drawing it in ink or marker. I just got to get on with it. And so if it isn't perfect, hey, it's not perfect. It's a sketchbook, it's not finished drawings. Tidy these up in a second. Yeah. So yeah, little quick stencils like these are really helpful for doing fun little noodles there, little interesting shapes. So I'm just putting some tiles on here, and just extend those out to the edge of the panel. Pardon me. Yeah. Itchy nose today. Maybe I got something from Corbin. Maybe, maybe not. Is the sound still working? Yeah, good. All brand new to me. So here's our building in the foreground, and what I'm going to do in a moment is draw the buildings in behind, and they'll be down, downhill. It's the idea that the town is that the town's moving downhill. So, as old towns would do. I like where I live here in Canada. It's very flat and dull. There's not, you go to other parts, even of this country, because this country is vast, and they've got these towns where, there's all these little uphill, downhill bits of business, and I think that's so neat. Little, river, creek going through the center of town, and everything built right up to the edge of it. It's very, very European. But where I am in London is because it's also a larger place. It's not, it's just flat. Just flat. Here's a river running right through the town. Guess what we named the town or the river in this city of London, Ontario, Canada. If you guessed Thames River, yeah, you're right. There's a town called Stratford nearby. It's where we have a big theater here in Canada. Guess what they named their river? You only get one guess. All you Shakespeare lovers out there. Okay, so here's, I'll clean up any little bleed over the edge here. Flat River? As soon as it says Flat River? No, Thames River. Like the larger London. The a lot of people from this area are of British descent. British, English, Scottish, Welsh. There's also Irish here, and a lot of Irish in the settled region. A lot of German, a lot of Dutch. Very very Caucasian European settlements going on. London was so very white when I was a kid, and now we're far more multicultural here. Okay, so here's our foreground building. And so what I get, and the Stratford, their river is called the Avon. like Stratford, England. Which is where the theater that Shakespeare would have his plays all performed was the Stratford, and on the River Avon. So, yeah, a lot of ingenuity in naming places in Ontario, and probably if our, that problem goes all across North America. A lot of places naming them their towns and cities and so on and so forth after where they came from. Okay, so I've got this the other red now, and so I'm going to try a couple things. I think that for this next layer, this next level of this little multi-layered town, and here's the thing about this, where I'm drawing right now, very well, more than likely, will be covered up by text. Yep. So one of the things I'm going to start with the one pages that we'll be doing in 2025 on my Patreon is that you get the stories and weekend stories that people on Instagram and Facebook won't get. But you also get to see the original art for things. Well, in the case of what I'm doing now, is that I'm going to be showcasing images of the art without any text on them instead for my Patreon. So let's call it a day there. Yeah, good, because I'm tired of holding this ruler. So Thames and not Tim's, Linda says. Yeah, Thames and not Tim's. I don't know how Canadians abroad survive without a Tim Hortons wherever they're going. Good heavens, they're going to have to start drinking other coffee. I'm surprised that, Starbucks locations stay open here. Just because you see so many vehicles going to Tim Hortons. There's a Highbury is close by my house here, Highbury Road, and there's a commercial area along it, and there's always cars blocking up Highbury Road as they're waiting for their chance to turn into the drive-through for Tim Hortons. And Starbucks, ghost town. So here's the first landing of our small little town here. And then in order to sell this across, what I'm going to do is put a railing in the middle. Like so. And then have that railing move down here. And so now when I draw this next little area down below, which I'm going to put down lighter, maybe there's a sort of little language here that says, you hold on to this railing while you walk down the stairs that you can't see, and you end up on the next level. This pen is being disagreeable. Get the ink out there, sucker. Yeah, not liking this pen. See, I tend to like Papermate pens, which this is, but more along the lines of the round stick, the Bic round stick that I'm using for the darker red here. But I'm trapped right now because I've tied into this lighter red that's in this pen, so I have to use it. So what I'll do is I'll put this line, this pathway, moving around the building, and then we'll draw the building down in the foreground. Woohoo! I don't know how exciting this is, but so like I was saying, I tend to do things a little organically as I go along, rather than structure out the whole, in this case, town, before I really get going. Just because I get bored. I don't like inking my own drawings because I get bored. It's like I've already drawn it. What am I doing? So, clearly I'm kooky for coconuts, but it works for me. We got to find methods that work specifically for you, right? So here's our little town. Here's our little building in the foreground here. And then we're going to have, what I'll do is I'll put a little, there we go. So I'll put a little arch. And I'll half hide it behind this building so that, so somebody who understands the shape of an arch, they'll recognize that this next place is behind this place. I'll put it up a little bit higher so it sells that a little more. Yeah. Thames, not Tims. That'd be something good to put on a placard, protesting if our Thames River here in London gets too polluted. Thames, not Tims. All the people from Thames will be marching around with signs. Hey, come on, don't be so mean to us. What do we do? It's the Father Ted protests, right? I don't know if anybody's here who's familiar with the TV show Father Ted. They get ordered by they're Catholic priests on this tiny little island, and they get ordered by the church because the small island cinema is playing Passion of the Christ. And so I want you guys to, we're thinking of going. You're thinking of going? No, you're not going. No priests are allowed to go to that. You're protesting it. You go stand outside and you make sure nobody goes in there because it's a sin. It's a sinful movie. So they stand outside, and because these characters are all silly, they're standing there saying, "Oh, hi, Barbara." And then the other guy goes, "Careful now." And that's the entirety of their protest. I like silly things like that. So I'm clearly not a person to get protest signed ideas from, because they're going to be silly. All right, well, so there we go. You can see how the town is developing and receding backwards. And then now I'll be drawing a large part of it that comes right to the foreground again, right to the edge of this panel. I don't know how exciting that is to watch. So today's suggestion is steampunk style about Lord Otter. And so I'm going to draw this, the town that he's the lord of, and then I'm going to do another, the next panel will be about his estate house, and then I think I'll identify, so now that we've got this overview of the character and his context, and then the next thing that I'll do is identify, what the problem is, the inherent problem is that Lord Otter is facing. And I have to add more steampunk elements as I go along. And so I'll be putting out a bunch of things in here. Silly fun. But yeah, I think yeah, it's 3:30, and unfortunately, I have to go. I have an appointment. But yeah, thanks very much, everybody, for coming by. I'll be back tomorrow, 2 o'clock again, and I appreciate people coming and hanging out and jumping in, you know, and having a chance to come back and to do one pages with people again. And yeah, I enjoy this. I look forward to it. But again, if you have any ideas you want to suggest or throw at me, or challenges, or 3 words, or one line of dialogue, or whatever it is, feel free to put it in the comments on this video or any of the social media posts on Instagram or Facebook and or Patreon, and put them in a book, and we will do them. And whatever the next idea, suggestion that I get sent to me, I'm going to do that tomorrow. So yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Linda says, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Christopher. Oh, thank you, Linda. Thank you to Linda, the moderator with the mostest. Thank you, everybody, for coming by and taking part. Susanna and Robert and Linda, and everybody else that's been here. And I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST. Bye for now.